Oh yeah. Oh, okay. All right. All right. I'll stop it. Take it out. Take it out. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. How are you all this fine Saturday morning? Let's thank the Ian King of the Galaxy Net network. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Taking us from night to day. So let's get this show on the road. Let's do a quick sound check. I believe we have, for the most part, resolved most of the gremlins, but don't you worry. No gremlin is better than I, that's for sure. Okay? So today, I am solo, but today will be an impressive day, nevertheless. So let's give respect to Empress Abner. She's off overseas somewhere. Good for her, yeah? Let her hair down somewhat, or hair up, as she's an African woman, up somewhat. You know, our air is strong, it's firm, it's, wiry, it's strong, and it demonstrates its strength by the way it settles on our head. Oh, yeah. So long may she enjoy herself. Yeah, she well deserves it. And you've heard her recite her experiences between each strong of these shows. And most certainly, she is truly an impressive personality. Truly an impressive personality. I also want to give recognition to the regular listeners to the show and viewers, of course. I want to thank you for your continued support, and your support is appreciated. Okay, there are times when it's challenging for me because I've got many hats, much to do, but reading your messages gives reasons why this is an important activity for me to continue to carry out at least once a week. I'm not sure I can cope with more, but certainly once a week. But more importantly, it's this interaction. I'm grateful that the messages resonate with clearly the majority of you. And this has resulted in significant increases in both my listeners and viewership across the world. So I appreciate your support. And remember, if you are listening, viewing us via Facebook or YouTube, please give us that affirmation, give us the ticks up, the tick up, yep, or thumbs up if you like. There you are. I'm doing it. There you are. Thumbs up. Just that affirmation that the messages, the key messages resonate with yourself. Maybe put that on screen. There you go. If it's on screen, yeah? The thumbs up. And don't forget to share the link if you're on Facebook or YouTube in particular. Share the link. Share the link with your family, your friends, your network, your associates, any random person who you believe will benefit from the core messages that these shows communicate to you. Please share. And if you're on YouTube, give us the like, or in fact, subscribe. Subscribing means you're notified before anyone else of what the subject matter will be in forthcoming show. It's further affirmation for the YouTube algorithm to direct others to this platform. So there you are. Please do. Please do. We appreciate your support. But more importantly, there is another more importantly, what I'm pleased is the numbers of you who reported change in your lifestyle, change in your attitudes, change in your actions, okay? Of course, this is the Motivator Show, where we translate words into action. Oh, yeah. And where success is ours for the taking. And I say that It sounds like a jingle, as it were, but it's not. It actually means that we mean what we say. It actually means that we are going to be our own change makers. It actually means that we want better for ourselves, our loved ones, our families, our friends, community, and others. We want better. No, we will do better. We will perform better regardless of the resistance that we might encounter. That's the reason for these shows. And I applaud you for making the effort. Don't expect to win all the time, but those occasions when you absolutely win, you know it has been worthwhile. Just one win in the face of multiple not so successful endeavors, just one win makes all the difference. Just one win. That's why we try and try and try again. We try and try and try again. Oh yeah, we try and we will win again. Does that make a difference? We win again. That's what it means. That's what it means. That's what it means. Why do I say all this with this confidence, determination? Because we have no choice. We have no choice. So it's better that we speak to our loved ones, speak to our brothers and sisters, speak to our parents, speak to our friends, our associates, those you trust, have confidence in, and seek from them wise counsel. Yeah? So that you could do better for yourselves, ourselves. That's the purpose of community. Yeah? And that community doesn't mean just because you share the same ethnic group, I have to say. That's the purpose of communities. Working together with common aim, common purpose. Hope that resonates with you. Hope it does resonate with you. But of course, these shows would not be the same without our guest. And guest I'm going to talk about later on, okay? Because there's a part of this show which, I said, it's been a part of the show since the beginning. And those, of course, the health messages. I refer to them as being health messages, really, and I was corrected during the week. They are, of course, health-related without a shadow of a doubt, but they're actually lifestyle messages. They're upliftment messages, as some rather articulate person recited to me this week. And I'm going to applaud her and say, yeah, I hear you. And of course, you are right. They are, of course, lifestyle messages. But I'm not a clinician, although I've been briefed by many clinicians on the health and well-being of the community, all communities, and most certainly my own community. Okay? And I've said many times, the stats, the figures, yeah, are unnerving. They're unnerving because we don't talk about the stats, the figures, the performance of our community when we're discussing our health. We don't do this enough. So consequently, awareness is floundering or has floundered over time. And that must stop for all of our sakes. That has got to stop. I know on the galaxyfooey.net, we now have health presenters, those who are trained clinicians or nutritionists on the galaxyfooey.net network. Yep, this is true. Sometimes there's conflicting information being provided, which is why I always say to you all, if in doubt, seek out a professional, whoever is your doctor, their advice, their guidance, their counsel, because they're trained to give you the professional advice. Okay? Those who have access to your medical records, they're the ones to speak to. Yeah? Not some random person on YouTube or Facebook or galaxytheory.net or other places. Yeah? Yeah? Whoever has access to your medical records is best placed to provide medical or clinical advice. What I'm about to say relate to lifestyle, recognizing our lifestyle has a direct consequence on our general health and well-being. I want that to sink in, but of course it means therefore that we have to take responsibility for our lifestyle. We can't palm off that responsibility to other people. It is our life. It is our health. It is our well-being. And therefore it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves. If you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of other people? Hope that sinks in. If you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of other people? Okay? So I will begin the lifestyle messages. Thank you. Oh yeah, lifestyle messages. And these lifestyle messages are lifestyle because these are actions we carry out every day. We incorporate as part of our daily habit, daily routine. But sometimes these habits and routine can have unfortunate negative consequences. So I'm just going to spend 10 minutes on the lifestyle messages. I ask you, please, to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you take into your body on a daily basis. I ask you to do so because of the potential consequences of excessive amount of sugar and salt consumed every day, 365 days in a year. Then multiply that by your age. Yeah, just do it. Get the calculator out. I can't do it in my head, unfortunately. Just calculate it. If you are 25 years old, just multiply it. In fact, let me try and do that on my little computer here, because it's a profound observation. It is a profound observation. Okay, it is a profound observation. If you take in additional amounts of sugar and salt every day, and particularly if that amount is taken not once, but 2, 3, 4 times in a day, either adding additional sugar or additional salt to the general food, and you consume those food 2 to 3, 4 times a day, and therefore taking your sugar and salt intake above what your body needs for its daily requirements, which is often the case, particularly if you live in the West, yeah, or indeed in Europe, the Caribbean, the Americas, many parts of the Americas, North America, and many parts of the motherland of Africa, and beyond, of course. Just consider this, okay? 365 days in a year, okay? Over 5 years, how many days is that? That's 1,825 days, okay? Over 10 years, that's multiplied by 2. That's 3,650 days. And you take an excessive amount of salt and sugar. I want that to sink in. 3,650 days. And you've taken excess of sugar and salt above what you need to live. What do you think are the likely consequences? One of the common consequences is diabetes and high blood pressure or hypertension. Now, why do I say that? Because when you look at diabetes and hypertension or high blood pressure in our community, we double or treble what is the average for communities across the world. We double or treble. And those of you with diabetes, those of you with high blood pressure know the dangers those conditions have for you and the consequences it has for your lifestyle. And what really brought it home to me recently, it's not so much that the higher levels of incidence in our community, it's the clinical or medical advice that are given to many members of our community. And a family I met only this week where a mother and daughter, the mother contracted diabetes and the daughter hypertension. And the daughter's only 31. They were given drugs, medication, but they were not advised how to change their lifestyle to reduce the impact of these conditions. They were simply told, well, it's okay now you've got the medication. In both cases, I note, it's okay. As long as you take the medication, you can control your diabetes, you can manage your high blood pressure. They were not told to look at and consider their lifestyle. And I found that a profound observation. So they will live a life now dependent upon those clinical interventions, medical interventions, but we're not told how to reduce the impact of those conditions on their life. I found that an interesting observation. How many good doctors, good clinicians, I pause, I want it to sink in, cause their patients to depend wholly on pharmaceuticals as a means to manage these public health conditions. We say public health conditions because they're so prevalent in the community. I wonder, that should be investigated, huh? I suspect it should, okay? I'm going to speak to others to find out if they were advised to look at their lifestyle, to look at what their cuisine, what they're ingesting into their bodies, in what is for them in excessive amount because their bodies are reacting to it. Diabetes, yeah, which is of course your inability to process sugar, the generation of insulin, the pancreas, yeah, in your body. Your body's become numb to the sugar. Yeah. High blood pressure, the hardening of the arteries, the difficulty of the heart to pump blood around your bodies. With the consequence, the pressure is higher. It takes more energy to do so. I wonder how many were not given the lifestyle advice. I wonder. But I'm not an expert, but I did advise in both cases they should go and speak to their nutritionists, yeah, and other doctors in the community, okay? They might need to call to give them the wholly holistic advice. Holistic advice, but looks at the whole person, not just the specific condition affecting the person. I wonder how often this is happening in the community. So I ask you, please, to consider the amount of sugar and salt you ingest. I no longer buy sugar and salt from the grocery shops. I no longer, but I have to admit, it took years to wean myself off the sugar. Yeah, not so long to take myself off the dependency on the salt as a means to enhance the flavoring. But it took a little longer to wean myself off the sugar, because I've got as a child many happy memories of adults giving me sugar, sweets if you like. And I'm feeling very elated by the experience. Until you realize, of course, sugars, the complex molecules, are very not dissimilar to the hormones and complex molecules that our brain secretes in order to control our bodies. And that similarity means that it affects our happy area of our brains, yeah, pleasure area of our brains, if you like. That part the reason why it's a challenge to manage our conditions. Yeah. So I simply ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you consume every day, and ask you to, and encourage you to reduce significantly, gradually reduce significantly the sugar and salt consumption. I equally ask you to consider the amount of fat and carbohydrate that you consume. And this is a challenge. But of course, the fat is primarily derived from meat-based products, okay? If you consume meat, you're usually consuming large amount of fat, unnecessary fat that you do not need. You do not need. Yes, meat will contain protein and other minerals, but the fat that comes with it is usually, particularly over time, accumulates in your body. We store it in our bodies. Okay? And you've seen so many members of our community, particularly our women, 80% who are overweight. And 80% of those who are overweight are obese. Yeah? Morbidly obese, I should say. And that has significant long-term health consequences. When you see both men and women, but particularly the women with these bloated shoulders, bloated abdomens, bloated thighs, and bloated buttocks, or bottoms if you like, yeah, that has long-term health consequences. It may be shapely, it may be visually appealing at some point in your lives, but the long-term implication is usually not in your favor. So I simply urge you to consider the amount of fat that you consume. And note that dairy products, it's simply another form of fat. Hardened fat is butter or cheese. Hardened fat. So you can see it. You can imagine that fat within your bloodstream, how much it will clog up your arteries, clog up your veins. But of course, the carbohydrate that we convert to energy, we store and convert to energy, carbohydrate primarily from wheat-based products. I ask you please to moderate your intake, moderate it. I didn't say take it out completely, moderate, moderation. And if you're unsure of what is the right quantum for you, please speak to your doctor, speak to your nutritionist. They're best able to give you the advice which is tailor-made for you, based upon your clear medical history and, of course, your current status. But I ask you to consider the amount of fat and carbohydrates that you consume. But I also ask you to consider the amount of starch, primarily derived from those rice-based products. And yes, I can hear those Africans from the Caribbean, I can hear those from West Africa and other parts of the motherland, okay? I hear you. I hear you. Rice is a staple part of our cuisine. Absolutely. Moderation. 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 I know some of you will say, well, what is the moderate amount? Again, it's not for me to give you that very specific advice. I want you to go seek professional advice. Let the professionals give you what is tailor-made advice that is tailor-made for you. Okay? I'm but providing general guidance, general advice. But without a shadow of a doubt, excessive amount of starch, excessive amount of carbohydrates, excessive amount of fat over the long term, remember 10 years, yeah, you do this every day, 3,650 days in one one decade, one 10-year period. How many is that over a 20-year period? And this is why these conditions often affect those who are in slightly older age. Just double that figure. I'm going to double that figure. So that will be 7,300 days you've consumed excessive amount of. Let me do it again. Sugar, salt, carbohydrates, fat, and starch. Be taken into your body in excessive amount. And after 7,300 days, or 20 years, it starts to show. It starts to show. For some people, it's sooner. Some people, it's sooner. And even when they're 20s and 30s and 40s, some cases 50s and 60s, they contract what becomes a common condition in the community. Diabetes, high blood pressure, yeah, heart conditions. Remember, the heart is working harder because you're overweight or you've got hardened arteries. It takes far more effort for your heart to work. Heightened levels of heart conditions in our community. Heightened levels of, I've got to say, cancers in our community. Directly as a result of the food, our lifestyle that we expose ourselves to. All the professionals recommend that we need to consume far more fruits and vegetables, particularly green vegetables. All the experts say this. I'm not an expert, but I'm going to follow their advice. It's pretty universal. Yeah. More fruits and vegetables, particularly green vegetables, but a broad range of vegetables nevertheless. They all agree you should drink the appropriate amount of water each day, between 2 to 3 liters. It will vary from person to person. Some people don't even believe that you should drink additional amount of water. Yeah, that's fair enough, provided you get enough water from the food you consume. In other words, you should not be consuming in large quantum processed food. It should be natural food, because like us, most foods are mostly water. Yeah, that makes sense? So reduce the processed food and eat the natural foods, non-processed foods. But between 2 to 3 liters of water is what the average human being should consume each day in one form or another. Okay? If in doubt, speak to your doctor, speak to the nutritionist. Please do so. Please do so. And of course, most critically, I repeat, most critically, it's important for you to exercise. And I don't mean going to work, walking to work, that's exercise. Yes, it contributes, yep, but it usually just your legs. Whole body exercise. So you're using all your muscles and you're generating a sweat. Yeah, you're not generating a sweat, you will probably haven't exercised sufficiently. I urge you to exercise. Absolutely critical. That's why, and part of the reasons why I feel so alive when I do these shows first thing in the morning. I've got my water handy here. There you are. Can you hear it? I have my water handy. I keep my water handy. I sip small amounts throughout the day as required. I've got my weights here, falling, running, stretching, jumping. Yeah. I have my weights here so I can do some pumping of my weights. I've got them here, and those of you on Facebook and YouTube, you can see my weights. Yeah, you can hear them. Oh, I love my weights. Huh? Because I've got one of these jobs which means I sit down a lot. I speak to people a lot, but I'm not exercising during the day naturally. So the time I spend first thing in the morning exercising, I know this is beneficial. I know it is beneficial. So without a shadow of a doubt, these lifestyle changes are absolutely critical if we're to have a long, healthy life. You should be in a position to live for more than 150 years. Yeah, none of this 65 years nonsense. 150 years. Yeah, at least that. Yeah, if you take care of yourself. Okay, and as part of that regime of exercise, yeah, more increased amount of green vegetables in particular and fruits. Drink the right amount of water each day so you're fully hydrated. Yeah, exercise is critical. Okay, and of course, you need to take care of your mental and spiritual health. And if in doubt for your mental health, please seek out professional advice. If in doubt for your spiritual health, again, seek professional advice. But most certainly, meditation I've found to be a wonderful way to calm and focus your mind, body, and soul. And I've found that to be a powerful medium through which I'm able to focus and build up durability, both physical and mental durability. And there's no way would I allow myself to just to flounder. I encourage you to do the same. Exercise, meditate, and seek out professional advice ever it is required. Do not let your ego get in the way. Do not let fear get in the way, because this is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. I hope these words see you well, feel you well, spirit you well, and be well. Remember, it is an attitude of mind, very much so. Yeah, no need to be depressed. And if you're feeling that way, go amongst people who are happy and go lucky. People who want to succeed. Be amongst them and resonate with them. You know, expose yourself to them. Okay, that's the way to transform your lifestyles. Okay, these are lifestyle messages. You're quite right. These are lifestyle messages. And if in doubt, well, you know, seek out the professional advice. I can provide some guidance, but actually speak to the professionals. Okay. All righty. All right. Okay. So let me move on very quickly. And this is going to be a really important show, because we're going to look at our economic position and what we could do as a community to enrich ourselves, okay, or indeed to create loyalty and build wealth within the community so it stays in the community. Okay, this could be that type of show. But what I want to do, of course, before I go to that section of the show, I just want to give a recognition to the loss of a great African. Those of you will be aware that this week of the passing, the rising of Shaka. He was one of my, yes, Shaka, the musician, the musical genius. Another child in my teenage, you know. It was his music that provided spiritual, yeah, and intellectual grounding. He contributed to who I am today. And those of you who know the name Shaka, the musician, okay? I know you wouldn't have been on CNN or the BBC or all these other places, okay? But very much have been in our community, okay? The style of music, reggae music, the dub style music, the African-centric, African-conscious music. Oh yeah, we have lost and our ancestors have gained a great African. I want to recognize him, and later next month, I'll do a show dedicated to the life and times of Shaka, the musical genius. His impact on not hundreds, but tens of thousands, if not millions of people's lives, okay, is profound and will be long-lasting, either consciously or unconsciously, will be long-lasting. So I say hail up to his family, hail up all those who were influenced by Shaka, hail up to those who will be influenced by Shaka, because his words, his messages, his vibration will resonate for many generations to come. Shaka, long live you, long live you, long live you. There's my 2 minutes to Shaka, but we will do a show dedicated to him next month. I think it's such an important person to recognize, to acknowledge. No matter what anyone says, to recognize and to acknowledge. All right. So let me now move on to the main purpose of today's show, okay? And I'm going to open the lines pending the arrival of my guest. And those of you who wish to interact may want to talk about Shaka, may want to talk about our health messages, or indeed make a commentary on past guests. I've got another problem for a few minutes. And those of you who've got the number, therefore you should share it to others. But I'll give the number out now to call the studio. And if you're in the UK, it's 0208 133 5616. I'll repeat, 0208 133 5616. You just want to interact, one about the lifestyle messages, two talk about Shaka, or indeed make a commentary on my past guest to this show. Okay, I've got not a problem. I'm going to be relatively straightforward today. It's Empress Abner is not with us today, but nevertheless, yeah, she's with us in spirit, as you all know. Okay. So what I want to do is really discuss our economic position. First of all, these words will resonate with most people. Reparations begins with self. I'm going to say it again. Reparations begins with self. We've got to undergo an internal self-repair. That's the beginning of reparations. And as we self-repair or collude with others for that repair process, we affect others in our immediate networks and wider networks. Why do I start off by saying repair? Because clearly, as a community, we are in certain parts of Britain, most certainly in Africa, the Caribbean, the Americas, and beyond. Our numbers are significant. But our economic position is curiously in no way representative of the numbers. Okay. And that's true across a number of important spheres of life. But if we are to transform this current position, okay, we will need to change our attitude and how we interact. That's why I say reparations begins with self. So let me take this further. In our lives, we develop a whole series of hopes and ambitions, aspirations, if you like, okay? And many of these hopes, aspirations, ambitions will have an economic consequence to them. A young person may have an ambition to become, let's see, a geneticist, yeah? And geneticists, yeah? Because we know that geneticists, just like technologists, are the future. That's where we should encourage our children to study the sciences, study the digital world, and utilize it for their personal satisfaction and economic realization. I hope that makes sense to you. And let's think this through. If we are to transform our current economic position, okay? If we are to transform our current economic position, do I have a call on the line? Ooh. Do I have a call on the line?
Yes.
Oh, good morning to you. Can I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Abu Akil. Greetings, Brother Martin.
Oh, greetings to you, Abu Akil. How are you, my dear sir?
I'm good, my brother. I'm good. All the better for listening to your program this morning.
You're so kind. You're so kind. How do you want to contribute to the show today?
Well, I want to underline your point about the lifestyle and
Yes.
eating fresh fruit, vegetables, and meditation, cutting down on the salt and the sugar, and having a healthy approach to life. The other thing that's really important for me is your recognition of our now ancestor, Jashaka.
Jashaka!
He is Jashaka,
Yes.
the warrior.
Yes.
He has been, for those of us who grew here in the 60s and 70s, he's been like an uncle, a big brother, a
Yes.
cousin. We grew up in a place where most of us didn't have our family around.
It is true.
We didn't have relatives that could give us guidance. And so having somebody like Jashaka that very clearly connected us to our ancestors has been a gift. He's given me strength throughout my life, and I didn't really know him personally. I knew he was in the area, but his music, Shaka, the bass line,
Yes.
that we are African warriors,
Mhm.
that we have an energy and a vibration that goes
Mhm.
back over many centuries and that we carry it forward, is a fundamental driver of what makes me today, and
Yes.
drives the whole agenda of reparations with spirit.
Yes.
The spirit that we know resides within us and is eternal. So rise up, Jashaka. He's influenced so many.
Powerful.
I think many of us would have fallen without his
Powerful.
music. So
Yes.
rise him up and rise up, Brother Martin, for
Thank you
for
so
hailing
much.
up
Thank you.
Jashaka
Yes.
and
for
our
Shaka.
health.
Yes. Oh, and and like me, of course, the music still resonates. You know, prior coming on to today, I play some Shaka music. You know, I tell you, the bass lines you say.
When I heard when I heard the news, I was playing his music right the way through the night.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Kunta Kinte, warrior,
Yeah.
you know, it's just resonating in my brain, and it's given me a vibration. Some of us don't die. Some of us rise up to another level, and Jashaka is one of those people.
Yeah.
He's taken it to another level.
Yeah. You know, you're so right. And it is such an important observation. You see, you use the word vibration. You know, that word vibration comes in every time, you know. I can testify that I passed numerous tests or examinations as a result of listening to the music in the background and studying. Yeah. Enabled me to go to a higher level. Yeah. It was just powerful. My brain becomes clearer. I become far more intelligent without a shadow of a doubt. Can you imagine? Shaka, you're laughing. Shaka music.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's carried a
Powerful
generation.
statement.
He has carried a generation. In fact, the power, that vibrational, those vibrational frequencies, that he wasn't even in any doubt about this being an African form, and this being an African healing form, this being a form that rewires our being for a frequency of success and taking our natural place on the planet.
Yes.
His influence is much wider than anybody could imagine.
Indeed.
You know, the whole, it's so profound.
Yes.
It's almost impossible to find the words that speak to it. And vibration.
That's right.
It's probably the closest we can get to explaining his brother's significance.
Yes. It's one of those heroes you don't hear on the BBC. You don't hear on ITV or Sky or any one of those places. But where you hear him is in your heart, in your intellect, in those times of sorrow. You hear it, and you are uplifted by hearing the vibrations of Shaka.
Janwa. I mean, there's so many times I was in, you know, grew up in a little place in South London, and there were times being a real the one little black face in the space, and you're facing 100 white men as one black man walking in the street, and Shaka's music inside of the spirit.
Yes.
Look, you can see 2 million of them.
Yes.
And keep going.
Yes.
The vibration. and them run where to.
Oh, oh,
Jashaka
yes.
in a King David style. Oh.
Oh, yes.
So thank you, Brother Martin.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the call. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I've got another call on the line. 3351. Good morning.
Yeah, OTEP, Mr. Motivator.
OTEP to you. OTEP to you. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Do you want to talk about
Yes,
Saka?
and thank you for your consistency. You know, every Saturday I wait, I turn on. I try to turn on you, and hey, this is Mr. Motivator.
Yes.
Get the consistency, my brother.
Thank you.
There's a couple of points here. Also I want to hail up to Jashaka, yeah, but the last time I went to a Shaka dance, yeah, it doesn't look like this is the problem with well, it's not a problem, but because you could some others could look at it like he's taking it to another level. But when you go at them, it's not people that look like me and you in there, you know.
Yes. Yes.
It's full of like white rastas, and then people are jump up and rare. So
Indeed.
I mean, I cannot blame them because they're enjoying the music. I mean, but yeah, it's a different. These, you know, the last time I went, I don't know when, you know, but yeah, that's one point.
Yes.
The other point was, you know, you was doing some calculations about some sugar and salt.
Sugar and salt, and how many days we over excess. Okay, and over 10 years, it's 3,650 days, and over 20 years, it's 7,300 days we overconsume in these basic items. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm glad you've got your compute your brain in working now, because what I'm going to say is really I wanted to, but the Empress is not there. Yeah, I don't want to take this to a different program here, but if you know, you can calculate how much sleep you have, right? You can calculate how much the average person sleeps over the years and stuff like that, and over his life. Yeah, I think there's a calculation.
Yep.
So then you can say, oh, the average person sleeps like he's asleep mostly like about 6 months.
Okay.
Or,
okay.
No, it's probably more than
what's
that.
the point you want to make?
Life.
What's your point you want to make?
Okay, the point I want to make now, right, is don't me up about, because the Empress, I wanted to challenge the Empress, yeah? We are in Ramadan, yeah? I'm in the Gambia. We're in Ramadan, yeah?
Okay.
So I don't know if Para Hotep is here, but I wanted to calculate, if you are praying 5 times a day, is it? 5 times a day?
Okay.
Right? Over your lifespan, yeah? How someone could calculate how many I think it's years, you know, how many years will you be praying?
Okay.
Right. The second thing I wanted to ask you, right, is has this
what I'm going to say before you go any further, I've got my guest here. My guest has now arrived. Can I make this request of you? Can I make this request of you? And I do apologize. Can we hold this call until after my guest has spoken? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yes, go ahead.
I appreciate your call, though. Okay, I appreciate your call because you're a very wise person. Someone I know we should interact with. So I appreciate the call. Let me take my guest, because my guest has got some really important messages which I want you to listen to.
Yes.
Yeah, powerful.
Yes.
But thank you. Thank you for your observation.
Yes. Thank you.
Praise be.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Now, let me bring my guest into the room, and let's get things set up here. Let me bring my guest into the room. Let's see if it works. Do I have Dr. Brown in the room?
Good morning, Martin. Yes, you do. How are you?
How are you, Dr. Brown?
I'm very well, thank you, Martin. Very well. Giving thanks. Yes, I'm very well, thank you very much. And yourself, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm well. Your voice is very strong this morning. I just need to make a slight adjustment to our volumes here. There can be no complaint that they can't hear you this morning, that's for sure. There you are.
Indeed.
Oh, Carlton. Can I call you Carlton then? I like Dr. Brown. Huh?
Whatever you're comfortable with, Martin.
Oh.
That's fine.
I will oscillate between the two, depending on Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown or Dr. Carlton Brown. You've been on my show on a number of occasions now because the messages you have are powerful messages and get to the core of the positions of Black people, African people, both here in Britain, Europe, the Caribbean, Africa, and beyond. That is our economic status and our ability to project that economic prowess across the world. And a community, a society unable to communicate and to project its economic prowess across the world is a community not looked upon favorably. Because most of the great nations of the world are economic powers. Okay? America, with an economy worth many trillions of dollars, most certainly projects its economic power across the world. And it can afford, of course, the largest army in the world. Britain, France, Germany, Japan, okay, Russia, okay, are all great economic powers. Okay. And we as Africans, of course, we as Black people, of course, need a bit of that. I think we need a bit of that, huh? What do you say, Dr. Brown?
No, listen, I think having a good understanding of our economics is essential, and having economic control of what you do. I mean, it's been said often enough in the annals of time, whether it's Kwame Nkrumah who says, do for self, or whether it's Marcus Garvey talks about doing for self. But having that political, social, and economic empowerment is really important. Now we can, I know Garvey said, if a person who doesn't understand his history is like a tree without roots. So you need to understand structurally and systemically where these issues have derived from. But equally so, it's about what do you do today to change the narrative and to change your circumstances, because we can't change yesterday, sadly, but what we can do is take a focus on and say, what can we do differently today to try and do better for ourselves, despite some of the challenges which still exist. We know they still exist, they're still there, but what can we do differently? Because that's the key trick, because we can't just sit in the circumstances that we currently see ourselves in. We have to move forward. When I think about when my parents came to the UK, we've moved on in terms of where we sit economically, but I hope my children will move on from where we are economically, and therefore it becomes intergenerational. And there'll be a time in the future, at some point, that we won't see it necessarily, but there'll be a time in the future where actually, the level of disparity has diminished, and but we have to take the actions now to make a change tomorrow.
So let me point just to help those who are new listeners, and they grow each week. And of course, those of you who are listening and viewing this show is transmitted live via galaxyafui.net. The show is transmitted live via Facebook under The Motivator Show. That's DE space Motivator Show. It is transmitted live via YouTube under The Motivator Show, and similarly under Mixcloud as well. Okay, so it's pretty unique in many ways. Okay? So before we go on, I want, please, Carlton, for you just to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Just a little bit, and maybe you might end with a funny story about yourself. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. So, Martin, my background, I started off working in a retail shop. That's my background. I started off in retail, working in Oxford Street, in a store called Mr. Byright, and I was a trainee manager.
I remember Mr.
So that was the start of my journey. But I felt that there was, I went to college, I did my A levels, and I kind of just wanted to earn a salary, and so I went into retail and grew and became a fairly young retail manager for a company, which was a great opportunity at the time. But beyond that, I decided that I wanted to do something slightly different, and I went into the corporate world after being a manager for 5 years, and essentially grew a career from working from the bottom, working to become a regional director for a FTSE 100 business. Then I got headhunted to work to another corporate. Beyond that, I've moved into I became a management consultant, and I've also run and sold a series of different businesses over the last 2 decades. Um, I, I I hold a master's degree in leadership and also an MBA in business and a PhD doctorate in performance management in business. So that's kind of the background. But I also I write. I'm an author. I've written a couple of books around corporate social responsibility, but also I am the founder of the UK Black Business Entrepreneur Conference. And author of the Black Business Entrepreneur Report, which focuses specifically on the challenges experienced by Black entrepreneurs in the UK. But again, equally so, I look as a consultant. I talk about solutions. What do we do differently? It's not just about recognizing the challenges, yes, but recognizing those challenges helps you to think creatively and say, right, what can we do differently from yesterday and do something different today to make a real tangible difference? So in a brief synopsis, hopefully, Martin, that's a bit about me. I'm an advocate for change. I think it's important economically. If you think about just some of the very basic data within this country in terms of entrepreneurs, but if you think about, before we go on to the entrepreneur piece, only 36% of African, Black, Caribbean diaspora own property in the UK, 36%. So that's a challenge. When we talk about Black entrepreneurship businesses in the UK, the average earnings on a Black entrepreneurship business is £26,000. That's turnover, that's revenue. That's not profit, that's revenue. So if you think about taking away your cost out of that, the cost of buying your products or services, lighting, phone bills, gas, electric, all those things, you're very likely not to be making a profit. So it's challenging. But we think about the education system. Even though there's far more, in the last decade, Black African Caribbean are far more likely to be going to university than any other ethnic group. But yet still, when they leave university, what you find, in the data tells us this is not my words, this is the data. Okay, so the data tells us that you are 30% still less likely to earn a similar salary to your counterpart, even though you have a similar degree. So if we look at any of kind of the big numbers, so whether it's health, our health outcomes are disproportionately worse. Education, we suffer in that space. COVID was a good example of seeing the disproportionality on health outcomes. So we look at health, education, poverty, wealth. We sadly we are disproportionately affected. So how do we change that narrative? In my view, it's one of saying, well, why don't we start to focus on if we get a good education, that allows us to get a better job, in my view, and gives us access to better opportunities. So if you think about this perpetual poverty cycle, if you're in poverty, really poverty, are you going to not particularly at a great school? That school, your outcomes may not be great. Therefore, your job prospects are not necessarily as great as they potentially could be. So you have this perpetual circle of things keep going round and round. So we have to change that. We've got to break the cycle. Now, one way which we can do that is through entrepreneurship as well. It doesn't mean that you have to have a degree to do well. People do well despite that because they've got passion, they've got innovation, they've got creativity. Now, within our community, the data tells us that we are 8 to 11% more likely to be innovative and creative than other ethnic groups. So if we've got that level of innovation and creativity, that means that we can produce stuff and do stuff that actually people aren't necessarily doing. All right. So therefore, if you want to solve problems, you need someone who's creative and innovative. So there's lots of things that we got going for us. Now, there's a guy called Dr. Glenn Lehman.
So the next part, so this is, you made a series of really powerful points, and I just want to share with the audience how I came across yourself. And I want to do it because it's really important that you then go on to develop your other points. I came across you because, of course, many of the listeners and others will know I'm also a local politician, a councillor. And I've recently gained a portfolio of the economic lead in the borough that I'm in, that is job businesses and town centres. Okay. And I was fortunate that a message from your office was sent to the leader of my council. This is in Southwark here in London, okay, inviting us, of course, to the Black Business Network conference. Okay. Now, evidently, it was an interesting opportunity. But what really tipped me over the edge was your report. Yeah, the Black Entrepreneurs Report. Okay, that was a seminal document. I want to encourage you to talk about the outcomes detailed in that document and encourage people to read it.
Okay.
It is a powerful document written by a person of Black or African heritage for peoples of Black and African heritage. Okay, it means, in other words, we control the narrative. Okay, really important to control the narrative. Yep, that in itself is a powerful statement of intent. Okay, I read this document and I realized, Dr. Carlton, Dr. Yeah?
No, Martin, thank you. Go on.
Document was going to be my blueprint. And whenever I encounter politicians who hold my portfolio, I refer to your document, yeah, and refer them to your website. So, well, look, it's an important blueprint for us to better understand what is happening. It's evident in this report. And we, as politicians, local or national, have an absolute responsibility to be change makers, not to discuss, not to argue about it, but to actually implement, to do it.
Agreed.
So you continue, now develop your point. Okay.
No, thank you, Martin, for that. Thank you for that. So in 2017, I wrote a book around what we call corporate social responsibility and diversity supply chain. Why was that important? Now, if you think about the public sector, as an example, you've got the public sector, the third sector, and the private sector. But in the public sector, the data suggests that 290 billion is spent in procurement per annum across the UK. So that could be in your schools, your local council offices, the fire services, anywhere the local councils, 290 billion is spent on procurement. That means they're contracting services in.
Correct.
Now, bearing in mind, Black and minoritized communities in the UK represent 16% of the population. But when it comes to expenditure within those businesses, less than 1% of procurement spend is spent with diversity communities. So for me, there's a real disconnect between the opportunity to the reality of what's being spent. Now, the reason for writing, going back to the reason to writing the report was a lot of the reports were, and I've written a report which talks about BAME, Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic. And that's a very homogenized classification. Because what that's saying is that if you're Black, Asian, Greek, Turkish, you're all considered minorities. But our experience in life is very different. And our experience in the UK is our lived experience is very different. And there's not very much data or literature out there what talks about just the Black African Caribbean diaspora situation. So I felt compelled that I needed to just drill down and look specifically at the Black African Caribbean challenges within the context of business within the UK. Therefore, we're telling our own story. I'm not constrained by other organizations being partnered with. It was my company Aspire. We commissioned the report. We wrote the report on the basis that we really wanted to look at the lens of the Black entrepreneur experience. So I talked to hundreds of black businesses. I asked them to fill out a survey. I analyzed the data, and I wrote this report. Then what that gives you is data based on something which is a foundation. It's not me just becoming emotional. You can say, here's the evidence. And I think it's better to talk to evidence than it is to talk to the, because emotions are important, but sometimes people switch off when they think that you, so, and I think there's a guy called Edward Deming. And Edward Deming, many years ago, was kind of one of the gurus of total quality management. And he says, data is everything. And without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Now think about that. Without data is everything. And without it, you're just a person with an opinion. So giving people ammunition and say, here, look, when a black person walks into a bank and looks to access finance, they are less likely to get it. That's real.
Right. It is real.
And not only do they feel that's real, but the data also supports that. So the British Bank say the same thing. Federation of Small Business say the same thing. My report bore that out. So you're looking at compelling arguments, not just your emotional side coming out. And emotions are important. The moral argument is important. But we've been, pushing the moral argument, what's the right thing to do for a number of years. So now you also want to say, actually, when you look at the outcomes of the report, what we do know is that where companies engage diversity businesses in general, and particularly on the lines of ethnicity, they're more likely to improve profitability, performance, and save costs. So actually, diversity is actually good for business. So it makes good economic sense. One of the reasons organizations say they can't do business because they say, oh, they're difficult to find, or it's complex, or there's too much risk attached to going to a smaller supplier in this case. So what the evidence does not bear that out. And there's companies such as Target in America who engage with thousands of diversity businesses. I think the number was 6,000 different suppliers.
Right.
Even though it's more complex, they've created a system where that's more manageable, and they found that they're generating more revenue because their customers like the fact that they're dealing with more diversity businesses. 2, they're getting better costs.
Yes. Yes.
Thirdly, their performance and efficiency has improved. So there's data and case studies out there that supports this narrative that when you do engage with more diversity businesses, you can do better. And particularly on the ethnic lines, that demonstrates that. So yeah, so the purpose for me is to try and give us the opportunity, give access to more opportunities. That's the critical thing about all of this. Give you the data is the evidence, but how do we now get access to those opportunities, to the bigger potential contracts and opportunities? Which leads me quite nicely into my segue, Martin, was that we have the UK Black Business Entrepreneur Conference in July this year at NatWest Conference Centre in the city, and we have a session in the afternoon called Meet the Buyer, Pitch for Success.
Oh, tell us more about this. It was a feature in my publicity for the show today. This piqued my interest. Tell the audience more about this. Why is it a feature of this year's conference?
Okay, so if you think about the backstops, we don't always have the opportunities to get access to say, I want a contract with Southwark, or I want a contract with Westminster, or I want a contract with Tesco's or Sainsbury's. For a variety of different reasons. A, potentially we think it's too big. B, what's the point? Because, we're not going to get through the door. There's lots of different reasons why we may not consider these as opportunities. Or if I go through the door, I'm not going to get through because, well, guess what? We never get through. So that's often the complexity of the situation. So my whole premise is this: if we want to change our own outcomes and create opportunities, we have to try and knock on those doors and create those opportunities. So at the conference this year, we've invited Tesco's, Selfridges, UK wholesalers, the Black Farmer, Wilfred the Black Farmer, and also he's got a company called The Hatchery that helps fledgling businesses and supports them to grow. And we have an online retailer called Wakuda. So we've got 5 retail buyers coming along. In real terms, you could enter your products into a to be shortlisted, because you have to, it's a process. You put an application in. You can do that via Eventbrite. But if your products get shortlisted, you'll be entered into to attend a conference, and you will pitch for a real life opportunity.
Brilliant.
So if I'm sitting in front of Cotswold Fairs or Tesco's, those 6 companies that have been shortlisted, they're going to come and do a 5-minute pitch, a bit similar to The Apprentice. They're going to pitch to the Tesco's buyer or the Cotswolds buyer. They'll be pitching to 5 or 6 of them, and they'll say, "This is my product. This is why it's great," etc., etc. The buyers would have already seen their products and shortlisted them. So, and hopefully, that my intention and my hope is that on that day, it's not just one company. You are pitching your product. It's not a competition. So all of you have all of the people that get shortlisted will have a real opportunity to get their products on that shelf in one of those companies.
Oh.
So that's for me, that's creating real opportunity, Martin. That's what it's about.
I did want to press you a little bit on this, because I was challenged by a number of local businesses to where I am when I encouraged them to listen to you this morning, and of course to sign up. Because some are quite established entrepreneurs, and of course the hesitation, which you've outlined already, won't get our foot in the door. The barriers will be too high or too costly, and often companies such as those you mentioned go for the big, medium-sized companies, because there's a certain amount of under the counter activities, okay, and which the smaller SMEs obviously cannot afford. Okay, why on this occasion will a company like Tesco's consider an SME to be a legitimate supplier to Tesco, with its hundreds of stores and billions of pounds of turnover? Why would they even consider a local SME?
Well, first and foremost, the fact that they're present. They don't have to be present, Martin. So they've chosen to be present. That's the first thing. Secondly, they have a strategic plan as an organization. Lots of organizations recognize that there's a disparity and a disconnect between their supply chain. Okay. They recognize it. And a lot of them are now trying to do something different. I see my purpose in this is about trying to facilitate some of this. Now, Tesco's, Cotswold Fairs, and others are willing to spend their time, money, resources to attend, to try and identify those potential suppliers that can get access to their supply chain. Now, it's easy to sit back, Martin, and we can sit back and say, guess what, we don't think there's an opportunity, we're not going to do anything about it. Or we come with a different mindset, so you know what, there's an opportunity here, I'm going to go for it.
Absolutely.
Now, it doesn't mean that we're always going to get through, but we need to keep knocking on that door. And without fear or favor, say, you know what, I want to grow my business. I think I've got a great product. What can I learn? What can I do to improve? And then I'll go again. And you keep going again until you get through that door. I'm not saying it's easy, but what we can't do is to sit back and decide, you know what, I'm not going to bother, because that's a waste of time for all of us as far as I'm concerned. We want to create progress. Remember what I said at the beginning, 36% of our community, Black African Caribbean, do not own a property in this country. So when we go to the bank to borrow money, the first thing they say, where's your asset? If we have no asset, we can't leverage that. So if we can get an economic growth within our community, we will grow as a community, intergenerationally. It gives us access to opportunities that we didn't think that was available before us. But we need to do something different. We have to change the narrative, Martin.
Without a shadow of a doubt, but I'm going to continue to relay to you in preparing for this show feedback I received from in Southern Kent or South London. Okay, because whilst they are very keen to, they have of course experienced letdown over some years. Okay, so they are somewhat jaundiced. So let me just take it further. So what you're saying is that these large multiples want to contract with a medium-sized company, and they will assess the logistical challenges that presents. Okay, how should so my question is, how should a company or an entrepreneur prepare themselves for this presentation? What would you recommend that they do in preparation?
Martin, as you know, I work with corporates, I work with SMEs, I work with small businesses, I work for different organizations, helping them with their clients. But look, preparation's king for anything, right? Preparation's key. I don't believe you shouldn't go into a business without having done your research. Okay, so if you're going into your business, you should understand the market, you should understand the competitors, you should understand what the regulations are for your business, such as, I've seen products where the labels have been absolutely shocking, just the labels, and it wouldn't be able to go on the shelf, for example. When a buyer says to you, well, who's your target audience? You don't understand it. How many people are in that market? I don't know. You might say, well, do you understand? I don't know. So, who's your target market? Who's your audience? What are your margins? Remembering that if you're selling a product and you're selling it directly to Tesco's or Sainsbury's, that's one price. But if you have to sell your product to a third party who sells it to Tesco, there's a different price. So, because everybody wants to take a slice of the cake in between. So, understanding your pricing, understanding your regulatory compliance. Where are you doing it? Do you need any licenses? All of these things are things that you need to understand. If you do that, I'm not saying listen, there are hundreds of people knocking on all of these organizations' doors every single day. But if you're prepared slightly better than that, those other companies, hopefully that opens up a bit more and prove your concept. Making sure you've got a great brand, it looks good to start with, because on a shelf, we're very visual people. You look on a shelf, you think, oh, that looks interesting. That one doesn't look so great. I'll choose that one. It could be, oh, I want to go on a price perspective. I want to do a penetration strategy where, I can make it a really low price, and therefore when I go on that shelf, it's going to fly out because it's a really competitive price. There's lots of different strategies that you can apply. But the thing is, you need to be prepared. So do your market research is the critical thing for me here. And then come up with a product or service that is compelling. And you understand that product or service. You understand the quality of it, what makes your brand different, what's your differentiation, why should people, who was going to buy your product and why should they buy your product, and what's the benefits of buying your product compared to your competitors. You need to do those things. And if you don't do those things, we can't expect to get through the door, right? So, but it's not that we don't have good products, Martin. As I said, we are 8 to 11% more likely to be innovative and creative. But we could adopt the mindset, guess what? Why bother? Because we'll never get through that door. We've got to stop telling ourselves that narrative. Now, at the conference, for example, we've got a room called Untold Stories, Hidden Truths.
Mm-hmm.
Untold Stories, Hidden Truths. Now, interesting. Why is it Untold Stories? We don't tell our stories.
Is this true?
Now, we've got a guy from Leicester coming down as a speaker in one of those rooms. He was he loved football and he loved chemistry. The only two things he was good at. He wasn't very particularly good at football, so he ended up doing chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's the only thing he was good at.
Yep.
And do you know what he did? With his passion for football, when you take off trainers, and sometimes you can get these really malodors after a period of time. And the same with football boots.
Uh-huh.
So what he did through his chemistry knowledge, he created antimicrobial bacteria product that can go into to furniture. It can go into football boots and trainers and other types of products to avoid bacteria growth.
Wow.
He's now operating in over 20 countries around the globe. He's someone with a Jamaican heritage, African, Jamaican, Caribbean heritage, doing tens of £billions worth of business. Now, including the likes of Next and others. So we don't see those stories. So he's going to be there. There's another guy who's at the conference speaking, who runs a business, a logistics business. servicing the likes of Tesco's, transporting their goods around the country. So untold stories, hidden truths. So we need to tell our own stories because we learn vicariously from what we see, right? If we don't see it, we don't believe it often enough.
Right.
So there are people doing some great stuff out there, but we don't often talk about it enough. We don't share those stories often enough. We don't get the publicity often enough.
Indeed.
So this is a platform for us to try and help that along the journey, and to say to others, look, if this guy can do it over here, this person, this lady can do it over here, it's possible for you to do it over here, right?
I did want to say yes. I want to say with the emphasis, yes, we can do it. And changing the narrative is why these shows are on. This is why this show's here. The whole purpose of these shows is that we translate words into action and change our mindset so success is ours for the taking. And it's intended to change mindset. And I begin the shows, with these, but I now will henceforth refer to our lifestyle messages, what we do to ourselves that harms ourselves. In order to stop that, we change our habits. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah. So it is really important. And I put this focus on a few words you've mentioned, and I want to, I might bring in a few callers, but I really want to just pick up a number of points. But of course, what makes you different, Carlton? What makes you different? What makes you talk this way?
Martin, interesting, Martin, in the report, and it's called the Black Business, the UK Black Business Entrepreneur Report, and you can access it on our website, and it's www. I can see someone is asking the question, www.aspire-consultancy.com. So that's www.aspire-consultancy.com, and the Black Entrepreneurs there. You can download it. It's there, available. Martin, listen, we are all unique. We have a similar heritage. I'm an African Caribbean. My parents are from Jamaica. I love a good ackee and saltfish and green banana. I'm no different, right? So,
Saltfish for dessert.
But we've had similar journeys. My mom came from Jamaica, and was a hardworking. She was entrepreneurial, and remember this in the report. 58% of our entrepreneurs in our community are led by females. So Black females are the most creative people that I know. They're innovative, they're creative. And my mum was just the same. She was the person that ran the partner, Martin, the partner draw. She was the lady who did the coach trips. She held dances. She was the person that catered for your wedding, whether it's curry goat and rice. She did it. My first dance when I understood Jimmy Cliff was listening to my mum, So,
Yes.
what I'm saying, there's nothing different. Our stories, our narrative. I'm a consultant. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an academic. I'm all those things. But what I do understand, I can remember, reading Soledad Brother Huey Newton's story many years ago. But and I was 15 reading that at the time, and I didn't realize why. I don't know. Maybe there's something in my consciousness that says that there's something to be done, and I reckon that for me, it is important we think about our economic development and then education. So education is fundamentally important because because when you walk through that door, they can't take you as a fool, as my mum used to say. Right? But it doesn't matter if you don't, but education is important, but having that entrepreneurial spirit. My mum came here with aspirations to become a nurse, but that didn't happen for her. But it didn't stop her from progressing. She worked several jobs, she did various things, and she was able to buy a house and all of that stuff. She, and I respect that. So, Martin, I'm no different. We have the same stories, but the key thing for me, I want to just push the agenda to make sure that we as a community change our narrative and start to take action. Just don't sit back and think about, well, I'm not interested in saying, well, you know what, there's no point. There's just no, and if that's the case, what is the point?
Okay, I want to explore this further, and reasons that you'd appreciate over time. I encounter the very similar mindset of those who were already defeated. Yep, and even those who are in business who are still defeated, mentally already defeated. And the challenge I have, and I know you have, of course, because whilst it's easy to work with those who are already motivated, okay, there's still a significant proportion of our community who are demotivated, long D, motivated, okay? And it's how we change this and change that narrative, their mindset, which has been, for me, a real challenge, because there's some resistance. Because after all, if you are a caged lion and the door, the gates are suddenly open, you look at that cage and look at those gates with suspicion. And the question is, well, why me? Why now? Why me? Why now, Carlton?
I think for me, the best way to answer that question is, if you think about it here, you can continue to stay where you are. You could. Now, 1988, I met a good friend of mine, and we had the conversations that we don't work with each other. We don't work as a community. We talked about every other community on the planet. They're doing this together. They're working collectively together. This company, they do that. And we don't. We have this distrust. And, I think if you think about, the Bob Marley song, "Free Yourself from Mental Slavery." So, we've got to, none other than I can do it, for ourselves, right? So we've got to take away the shackles of the past in our minds and say, look, we have to be more collaborative. Things such as the Black Pound Day and spending Black Pound and all of those movements. Now, Malcolm X was talking about this many years ago, and he said, actually, but it's not about having a Black Pound Day. Why not go to your local supermarket and spend your money with him on a regular basis as part of your normal day-to-day shopping? And it becomes normal, not his planted is £1.50. The guy up the road is £1.25. Well, actually, if you start shopping there regularly with him, he's able to shop his price a little bit more because he's got the economies of scale. So what I'm saying, we've been talking about this for a long time. Well, we don't celebrate each other. One, two, we don't work collaboratively. We've got to stop that. We've got to focus on actually how do we improve. So that demotivated, as you describe it, with a long D. Well, if you're continually in the mindset and you're with a group of people that continually denigrate our own community, that's all you're ever going to think about. So you need to break the cycle. You've got to break the cycle and start talking to demotivator and say, Martin, tell me, what do we do? And speak to other people in different circles and open up their thinking and change their thinking. Because unless we do that, you're still going to be the same place in the next decade. I don't want my children to be thinking about this in the next decade in the same way. I want it to the agenda to have moved on. But unless we take the actions today, we're not going to have a different outcome till tomorrow. So we have to be thinking differently. We have to take different actions. And it's easy to say, this person they don't want us to succeed. No, let's take control of our own narrative and take control of where we want to go, the direction we need to take. Simple as that.
Wonderful.
So,
beautifully said. Beautifully said. Don't worry. Beautifully said. And that was a necessary question, because, as you know, if there's a resistance there, it is because of that mindset and the challenges to change. And we've got to help people to change the mindset, empower them to change the mindset. And let me take another further question which came up in part of this preparation, and I'll then let you get back to the essence of our discussion. That's, of course, the issue of gender. And you mentioned gender a moment ago in terms of women and their creativity. And the challenge put to me by particularly young men between age 21 and 27, there seems to be a great focus to encourage women into business, but not a similar focus to encourage young men into business. Is that a narrative you share, or is that one that is simply a result of circumstances.
Let me just caveat what I say. I want to go back just one point really quickly, but I'm not saying it's easy to break the mindset, but if you don't do something different, you're not expected to get a different outcome, right? So you need to think about, what can I do differently? Can I read a book about something? Can I associate with a different group? Can I join a network of different people? But over time, if you start to do things differently, you'll start to operate differently. But there has to be intention. Now, if you don't have the intention or the mindset, no matter what you say, it's not going to change. So, you know, so that's the first thing I want to talk about now. Now, in going back to your question about young men versus young women. Now, there's hardly anyone I know who doesn't think, oh, I'm doing a little side hustle. I'm doing a little bit of this. I'm doing a little of that. Both boys, young men, young women, young girls, doing something to try and get ahead. So that's uniquely within us, I think. That's part of what we've been doing for years. That's never changed. And I think that continues. And I think there's a lot of innovation going on, more than what we see. I've seen people in the traders market. I've seen people getting T-shirts and putting their own brands on T-shirt. I'm seeing a lot more entrepreneurship going on with lots of young people. It exists. It's there. But it's very much sometimes a little bit under the radar, and it's not what I call a fully fledged business yet. In some cases, it's operating in a entrepreneurial way. I'll do that. I'll do that. They haven't formulated the real business plan. It hasn't formulated, being registered, looking at a market strategy. They haven't done any such, but a lot of people are doing that. Now, there was a report by the British Bank that talks about growth of black businesses. The Federation of Small Businesses, my report. There's Lloyd's Bank did a report as well, South NatWest, and it shows about the growth trajectory of black entrepreneur business. So we are growing, Martin. So that's the data's there to tell us that we are growing as a business. So as a community. So, and I think that will continue to grow. But yes, in some cases you don't necessarily always see it. Sometimes we don't always tell the stories. Going back to what I was saying earlier on, and we need to do more of that. And I think it's really important that we share successes within our community, because it becomes believable.
And thank you, Bont. And it's said particularly those young men I encountered who made the commentary, but all recognise that they individually were performing above their initial expectations, and their optimism for the future knows no bound. Let me assure you, they were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And when I encourage them to do, forgive me, anyone else, I encourage them to get married. Get married. I found that married men or women make the best business people. I just find that they tend to be far more grounded. They're clear. They're less likely to take unnecessary risk, although risk is the necessity of business, mind you. And they're more than likely to share a problem and therefore find a solution. Okay, these are remarkable qualities I've found amongst married men and women. Okay, but my real point, I just want to take this conversation further. You mentioned the company by the name of Target, which I'm aware of in the US, brought together these SMEs to enable them to gain the public sector or large corporate contract. Is there a similar company such as Target here in the UK that you're able to refer to? Is Aspire a similar company to Target in the US?
Well, we're nowhere there. We're a very small boutique consultancy agency. So.
He is big. Look, you've heard it said. He is big. Go on, Carlton.
There are lots. In terms of what Target are doing, I'm not aware of a company of that level of magnitude to date in the UK. Mm-hmm. There are lots of companies who are working towards trying to have a more prolific, diversified supply chain in terms of procurement. So yeah, that's the answer to that particular question, Martin. I'm not aware of that particular yet. Just as you know, just to give you an example, there's just to show you about young black men. There's a company called Lend Dough, as in dough, as in money. So, for example, there's a guy called Demi. Now he runs that company as a venture capitalist. They lend money through tech. a way of so they use tech and they're lending money. So there's innovation, one, and two, they're lending money to the community. There's the other companies called Cornerstone Partnership, run by a guy called Rodney Appiah and his team. That they've got their venture capitalists. They've got a £20 million fund. There's Impact X Capital, run by Eric Collins and his colleagues, have millions of pounds funding. So there are black organisations out there who are doing great innovative stuff out there in the market today, and they are, in this case, they happen to be young black males. So they are there, they do exist, but often, as I said, we don't tell our own stories, so we don't often see them. And to tell that story, so they definitely do exist for sure. But women are definitely leading the march.
I knew you would say this, and this is perfect. This is rich information for our listeners, okay? And they will capitalize upon it. Will these venture capitalists and others be present at the conference? Would you be aware?
Yes, in some cases, yes, for sure. Eric Collins, Impact X Capital, will be there. We've invited, even though they're not speaking this year. So, for example, Lendo and Demi will be there in presence this year, even though they're not speaking, Demi and Lendo. But Eric Collins from Impact X Capital will be there as an organisation to talk about what they do as well. So, and it's important that we give access. Again, it's about that thing about access to information and knowledge. The one thing we talk about, and I talk about a lot, is this thing called social capital. Social capital is access to people, resources, or opportunities that you would not have had access to had you not been in that space, right? Yes. So important to think about, how do we network, Martin? We need to build relationship. If it's not a competition, it's not a competition, and we've got to learn how to trust and engage with each other and build real relationships with each other more than we have done. And we are doing that more. And I generally feel that's the case. And the more we do that, the more we could, because, when I talked about free ourselves from mental slavery, it was actually, sometimes there was some colonial, divide and conquer, all that kind of stuff going on. And if you lived in the house versus not in the house, all that kind of stuff, that mindset needs to go. It just needs to be gone, because actually, I know it makes sense. We're stronger together, and we are, and we need to perpetuate that narrative about in our community. And there are lots of our community doing fantastic stuff now. And I just saw a question come up in terms of talented, mature black males. Now we have a speaker, and I'm not going to. And incidentally, Martin, the conference this year is sold out. Right, so the conference is already sold out.
Look, please, a bigger venue where we community are publicising this event, and it's too small. We need a bigger venue. That's an official complaint to you. Oh my God!
But we've got a guy, and I don't want to burst his bubble but if he's doing some amazing things. He's a mature male, I would say above 50, but he's doing some absolutely amazing things with brands you would never think of. You thinking, really? He's doing work as an entrepreneur with, I'm talking about really serious household names, and he's created those opportunities. And as a mature entrepreneur, but I say he's mature today, he's been an entrepreneur for a long time in different segments, but today he's reincarnated himself in this space, and he's doing some amazing stuff. So age is nothing, as Aaliyah used to say in the song, age is nothing but a number. Okay, so it doesn't mean, and the thing is with entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can just have, it's about appetite, passion, coming up with a plan, having a strategy, all of those things. So yeah. And I think we can always learn and grow, for sure. But we must think about ourselves more collectively than in being individuals and operating in silos and building better relationships. So that's something I think we can do for sure.
That's a key message from this show of making sure is communicate. Our business communities need to collaborate, cooperate amongst themselves for you can become far greater than individual part. That's
Correct.
the important lesson for us to acquire. But certainly my own borough, businesses are coming together. I know in the adjacent borough, in my case of Lambeth and Lewisham and Croydon, it has most certainly happened in increasing numbers as well, and across South London, North London, East and West London. It is most certainly happening without a shadow of a doubt. But this conscious of time, and I wonder, Carlton, if there are certain qualities or habits you want to encourage in our business community or entrepreneurs, what would be those qualities you are particularly looking for us to develop as entrepreneurs, as business people? What are those special qualities you're looking for and you would focus on because those qualities exist? What are those qualities?
I think there are a few, and I remember listening to the Black Farmer last year at the conference, Wilfred, and he said, one of the qualities he says as an entrepreneur, he says you should have is passion.
Yes.
And he said you must be passionate about your business. And I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I get it because he said and his words were not mine. And I'm not gonna. He says passion defies logic.
Indeed.
He says. I said, what do you mean defies logic? When I think, he said, well, think about it. He says, imagine if you're meeting a partner or you're in a new relationship. He says, you do the most stupid things because of passion. You do things that are not seem normal because you're passionate about that person. And he said, it even defies logic. Why would you do such a thing? Because you're passionate about it. So I think, and passion will take you through those difficult times. Because I'm not saying entrepreneurship is easy. It is not. It is not as Buju Banton said, it's not an easy road. The glamour and the glitter, they think it's a bed of roses. No, it's not. It's not easy. It is difficult. It takes persistence. It does take that passion. But I think one of the things I really strongly believe in, and I've always advocated that, is have a plan. Plan and do your market research. Often you go into think, I'm going to start this. Yeah, great. And next week you're in it and you actually, what am I doing? Think about what you're doing first, do some research. So listen, 50%, Martin, 50% of startups fail within the first 5 years, right? 50% of businesses, startups fail in the first 5 years for a variety of different reasons. One of them is a lack of a plan, lack of marketing, lack of capital, lack of resource, poor cash flow management. There's lots of reasons why it doesn't happen. So passion is important, of course, because it takes you through those difficult moments when things aren't going so well. But having a plan, having a strategy, doing your research is also really, really important. But it's a combination, but also having a network of people you can call on. Because sometimes, if I speak to Martin's in business, I say to Martin, tell me, I'm going through this challenge, and what do you think? And having a network of people you can bounce ideas is really critical as well. So as we say in Jamaica, one hand can't clap. You can't do it all on your own. You need that network. Yeah, so I think that's really important.
Give us 3 really useful qualities to look out for. Okay, and I think that's enough. That's enough for now, because I want to whet the audience, because you are, of course, a natural guru. You don't mind me saying this, Carlton, a natural guru, a business guru, an expert here in the field. Okay? And you've been open. You've made sure that the audience understand what has been said, and of course where they can go to obtain the advice. I suppose my closing question to you right now is the next step. The conference is sold out. Okay, and whilst I believe the opportunity to pitch your ideas is an excellent opportunity of this conference, will you commit to seeking out a larger venue, Carlton? And we, the around you, will make sure we fill out whatever venue you find for next year.
Okay. So Martin, yes, I'll commit to that for sure. Okay, for sure, because it's important. It's important. And it's important that we do get together. It's important as a community we get together in an environment that is conducive for us to want to work together for sure. And we just got to stay focused, Martin, on what we want as a community, not keep worrying about other people and what they're doing. Focus on our own agenda. And that is about getting us to become more sustainable, having economic empowerment, that we can do the things we want for our families and for ourselves. And that's what it's about critically. But we can't do it on our own. And we've got to change our mindsets in some cases, not in all cases, clearly not, about that we can't do stuff, because we can. And we have done, some of the greatest entrepreneurs in history have come from this community. So let's not fool ourselves. We are a creative, innovative group of people that can do exceptional things once we put our mind to it. And that's what we continue need to do and work towards exactly that.
Beautiful. And the last question I was supposed to ask you, apparently, about banking, access to capital, but most certainly banks for some reason. It's an interesting one for this young lady. She's asked a question: are there black banks that are less likely to take to perceive us in ways that enable us to gain what is a loan to which we have the capital, the asset to substantiate? She's asking, where are the black financial institutions? You mentioned the big corporate, that's fine, but black financial institutions. Interesting.
So for example, I talked about Impact X Capital. They're a lending institution. It's headed up by a chap called Eric Collins. He was on Channel 4, the Moneymaker show. There's companies called Lendo, which I alluded to earlier on. They lend money to black organizations, as well as others within in the community. There is Cornerstone Partners, as others. You've got Jamaica National Bank, but also you've got companies that lend. You've got the Pentecostal Credit Union, who lend money. So there's lots of organizations that are funding, but let's not lose sight. Anyone who lends money wants their money back with interest. So they're all going to be to what I call risk averse. They want to make sure that when they're lending money, there's a strong probability that they're going to get repaid. Now, that's whether you're going to conventional lending institution or an institution from within the community. It doesn't matter. They're all going to look at saying, do you tick a couple of boxes? And they need to understand that as well. So yes, there are organizations out there. I don't know all of them extensively, but I think I've given you maybe 3 or 4 that are there, or 5 who can actually support you in that respect for funding.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, how you respond to that question. And I know this particular listener would like to call after this show, so I'll refer to you, I suspect. I just want to say to you, Carlton, this has been a really information-rich experience. Is there something you've not said that you want to share with the audience now? I've got maybe 3 minutes remaining. Any closing messages you want to share with the audience?
No, I mean, I think for me, Martin, is this: if you want to do something, it's possible to do it, to be done. And I think when I look back, and I use the term, "Don't live on Someday Island."
Yes, I'm familiar with this particular term. Please tell them what it means. Tell them.
But someday I'll do this, and someday I'll do that, and someday I'll get there, and someday I'll do this. I just think if we want to do something for ourselves, we need to make a decision, adopt the right mindset, and take action. That's it, and follow through. Don't live on someday I'm going to do this, someday island. Decide that you want to do something and go for it. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that. There are going to be absolute challenges, but surround yourselves with a network of people that can support you through that journey. And if you can do that, you have a better opportunity of getting where you want to get to. Doesn't matter if you want to go out and start to do a degree, go and do it. If you want to write a book, do it. If you want to start a business, do it. It doesn't matter, but take the action, what you want to, the outcomes. You are in control of that. narrative. No one else can stop you from doing that. That's what I would say.
Dr. Carlton Brown, thank you. Excellent interview. Communicated well to the audience. I can tell by the messages both online and what I'm receiving on my various devices. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have so many of you know. You resonated with quite a number of people out there. And this copies of this show, of course, are available on YouTube and Facebook. I would encourage those of you who've listened to the live edition to repeat the session again and again. You find in life, repetition breeds success. Okay? It breeds success. Dr. Carlton Brown. Carlton, friend. Well, wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Keep up the good work. We are here to support you, and we look forward to an even bigger conference next year. Sorry, you would say.
No, thank you, Martin. And as I said, I encourage those who are interested to go to Eventbrite for the Black Entrepreneurship Conference, Pitch for Success. If you've got a product, a food or drink product or a makeup or well-being product, and you want the opportunity to pitch to some of those corporate clients to get that opportunity, please enter. Tell your friend. If it's not you, tell someone who you know. Because I want us to grow, and if we can grow, it's about accessing these type of opportunities. So please, if you could do that, that would be wonderful. So thank you.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Carlton, thank you so much. A good, strong to you, and long may you continue this wondrous work, vital work for the community. Blessings to you always.
Thank you, Martin.
Bye. Bye-bye. Wow, audience. Wasn't that something, huh? Wasn't that something? Now, that's an inspired African man, inspired man, isn't he? Huh? And he's demonstrated where there's a will, there's a way. If you're passionate, you can overcome those barriers, okay? And there are many barriers, and he's made it clear. It is not easy. But if you're determined, if you're absolutely committed to the course you've placed yourself on, then success is more than likely to occur, okay? But it's so vital in business, it's so vital in life, not to be shy to ask questions. Yeah, I'm gonna say it again, not to be shy to ask questions. No questions are silly questions, you know? A precocious mind, an inquiring mind, yeah? A questioning mind, okay? It's a healthy mind, yeah? You're aware, you're asking questions, yeah? And as you receive the responses you're using at the basis for even more complex questions, yeah? The day you stop asking questions is the day you most probably have forgotten who you are, I suspect, okay? Even at my age, I do all-nighters. I study all night, yeah, to ensure that I'm aware of what is before me. New skills, new experiences, yeah. That's what I do. I study all night, and I arrive in the morning refreshed, yeah, empowered, refreshed, and empowered. You could do the same. I urge you to do the same. I urge you to do the same. And I know that Jashaka and the vibration of his music, okay, is part of who I am. And Jashaka, the vibrations of his music resonates, yeah? We're bouncing, we're vibrating together, you know? Because of course, we are but energy, we are but vibrations, yeah? And if you get the right frequency, that vibration can be transformative, okay? It can overcome those habits which inhibit our growth. Yep, those vibrations can enable you to think in a different way, a new creative way, a more determined way, okay? But it takes you taking those steps forward. You've got to take that decision for yourself. Once the decision is taken, do not backtrack. Do not backtrack. Forward march. Yeah, that's what Marcus Garvey said. Forward march. Never backtracking. Forward march. Forward march. Success is ours for the taking. Yeah, that's the motto of his shows. Success is ours for the taking. Those of you who are viewing this via YouTube and Facebook, you could see it just above my left-hand shoulders. You see it. The Motivator Show. Success is ours for the taking, and we absolutely have all what it takes to be successful, no matter the numbers of objections, the number of barriers, hurdles that might be before us. We have what it takes. And it's our duty to fully exploit our natural God-given talents. And if that's not get you going, then I'm not sure what will. What you need to do in that case is go back to YouTube or Facebook and go through this show again and listen to Dr. Carlton Brown's words, his wise words. Listen to the words, listen to how they were delivered, and listen to the essence of those words so they can resonate with you. They motivate you. So this is the Motivator Show, where we translate those words into action and where success is ours for the taking. Hey, until the next strong, I remain the motivator. Why, yes, sir, I'm feeling high. Dr. Carlton Brown, he's made me so high. I'm feeling stronger than I started this show. Oh, I'm feeling good. That's what we need to do to each other. Inspire each other to action. Yeah. And success will follow, be assured. Okay. All right. I need to hand over now on the Galaxy Freeway Network to the next presenter, and let the next presenter maintain the momentum, the vibration. Success is ours for the taking. So all of you on that network, please listen on, listen on. Let me disconnect from there. Thank you. And I also want to say to those of you on the YouTube and Facebook side of things, remember, listening is great. Listening can be somewhat passive, but actions speak louder than words. And I would hear about your actions, what followed on, whether taking care of your lifestyle or taking care of your economic position. Yep. Or you come together, yep, as a couple now, and using that as a basis to develop your economic position. Do you have children? Do you have to care for? Using that as reason and motivation to improve your economic position. We've got to make that decision. Once the decision is taken, nothing can stop you. Remember, working together is the key ingredient here. Collaborative working, okay? Community wealth building, if you like. Working together, yeah? Working together. All right, cool. I'm now so high, I need to calm myself. I'm going to go out this morning and I'm going to be talking to people on the doorstep. I'm better understanding what their needs are, okay? So we can respond as elected members to what the electorate, the residents are saying to us. So we continue to resonate together, yeah? There you are. Until the next strong, I remain the motivator. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours. For praise be to you all. Long live to you all. Stay strong and be kind. Praise be.